and welcome back to Circles Theory. Today we continue our discussion on The Witcher Sword of Destiny, a series of stories that we are seeing continually depict the question of what does it mean to be a monster. We are exploring this through an existential psychoanalytic perspective, which is a bunch of fancy words to say we're looking at the deeper meaning within the text. This is a fascinating story that asks the question of what is love and what are you willing to sacrifice for it. So without further ado, let's hop in.
That's what it's gotta be this time. Yeah. Sun starts to set and the moon shall rise.
Hopping into this story, which I found to be one of the more interesting ones. Up until this point, we've discussed domestication, assimilation, the changing of times, and the death of magic. We've discussed this in our past videos. All of these stories are building on each other. If you have not watched the past ones, I suggest you go back and take a look. Those are all available in this playlist. Regardless, looking at this story, a short synopsis and spoilers ahead, Geralt finds himself hired in a point where he really needs the money and going out to try to help translate for a baron who has fallen in love with a mermaid. He's constantly trying to speak and interpret. This is not going well. Ultimately, what discovers is that the mermaid is upset that the baron will not make any sacrifices. He will not give up anything of himself for this love. This story is paralleled as Geralt has a short fling with someone that Dandelion cares about dramatically. We see this in this connection as the bard loves Essie, but she has a passion for Geralt. The two of them end up having a romance. The Baron ultimately ends up getting what he wants anyways, as the mermaid sacrifices everything for that connection. This theme is played out. Essie is willing to sacrifice everything just for a moment of that feeling of love with Geralt that he ultimately cannot reciprocate. And the story ends dramatically. We ask questions about the nature of art and the stories that we tell, which I think this story more than anything gives us a deeper look into the author himself. Ultimately, it wraps up with the bard talking about the nature of stories, a part that I found very, very interesting. He asked what story should he sing? Should he sing the story he has, this ballad of love that ends in a happy ending, or should he tell the true story? The story where the Geralt never ends up loving her, where he leaves her, where he never connects with her, and a few years later she dies horrifically in a plague, and ultimately is carried away to be buried by the one that truly cared for her and never got a chance to in life. What story do you really want to hear? Do we really want to look through the lens of reality and take a look at who we really are? And this is a good place to pick up from Eternal Flame. Eternal Flame, that last video, and if you haven't seen, go back and take a look, is asking us about assimilation and how we engage and enter into society and what we're willing to give up. And the question now becomes, when we love something and when we engage in that society, are we willing to sacrifice everything for the idea of that, for the idea of connectivity? Are we willing to give up our freedom for that? And so we see a lot of different ideas brought up and a lot of discussion. This is one of the few moments where we see a lot of headbutting between Geralt and our favorite bard. Right, there's a moment that I thought really stood out to me, where he Dandelion aggressively yells at the Witcher, at Geralt. He goes, you know what your problem is you flaunt your otherness, you aggressively impose your abnormality onto others. And this is why Geralt can't engage, why he can't become domesticated, because he's unwilling, he's unable to not push his point of view onto others, to not aggressively push this forward. He is so bold and so free that it is threatening to those acting in Sauter's bad faith. And so he becomes a representation of the feral freedom that aggressively pushes on those that are just incapable of achieving it. And we also see parallels in this, especially when we start talking about what Geralt discovers, right? They go out and there's been this other sea plot about monsters in the sea and boats being unsafe, and they go out and explore it. And what they find is a race disturbed down there that has become agitated as fighting and killing. And what we're ultimately asking is about the depths within us, that inner desire to fight against this domestication that we have put onto ourselves. A theme I'd like to explore more. I'm actually going to do a series on Walden coming up that is going to explore those themes in more depth. So I hope you stick around for that. But so we see this continually yet again played out. As I said, the question becomes, what would it take? How much love would you need to feel to sacrifice existential freedom? To give up the side of you that is feral and free and alive? To abandon magic? How safe would it need to make you? And what if you sought that and you never got it? Would it be worth it? So we continue this next week as we hop into the book. The story of the book is named after the Sword of Destiny, where we look into some interesting and I think challenging topics. I hope to catch you next week when we do that video. Please check out one of our others. In the meantime, your likes, comments, anything, all of that is extremely helpful. I appreciate the support as we try to discuss these ideas. So until next time.